Today I want to share with you some amazing new technology that I came across when I was doing some EMF protective research. My name is Dr. Don Paris. I'm the author of Regaining Wholeness Through the Subtle Dimensions, which has become the Bible for scalar electromagnetic research through radionics and subtle energy. So Tom, you've been involved with these anomalous sciences for many decades. You've come across radionics, free energy, electromedicine, and even biogeometry, weather control. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that later. But throughout these decades, you've published hundreds of papers, documentaries, and books from scientists and got their work out to the public. So Tom, tell me a little bit about some of the research that you've done. If there was one experiment or research that you came across that stood out above the others, what would that be?
Well, that's a good question. I'd seen so many amazing things, from faster than light non-electromagnetic waves. But I would have to say it was Trevor Constable's biogeometric weather engineering, biogeometric access to the ethers, or scalar as some people call it. Now basically what Trevor would do, he was chief radio officer for Matson Lines, big container line, so he did his experiments on ship, and he would make geometric orgone accumulators, and he could take it on a clear day, set one of these devices in a certain direction outside on the ship, and within an hour, on time lapse, we could see rain coming in.
Operation Pincer 2, which brought Los Angeles its wettest July in 100 years. An operation notified and filed in advance by us with the federal government. For 20 years in this work, my credo has been a simple one, and it has been followed inflexibly. Only results count. Only results count. That's what underlies what you're going to see now.
And he did this hundreds of times. Wow. Fantastic enough. But what really got me, I remember one day I got a call from Trevor. He had just come into Hawaii on the SS Maui, which was his ship. And he called me up all excited. He had developed a new device he called the Spider, which was basically his 4 truncated golden section cones spinning around. I guess it looked like a spider, so he called it that. The first test, he ran it inside the hold of the ship, behind 12-inch plate steel bulkheads of the ship, and he made it rain. Wow. And as he pointed out, that this geometric access to the ether is what we call scalar or whatever. The ship was invisible to the geometric access to the ether. This is a very important point, and that was probably 30 years ago that I learned that.
So today we're here to talk about your new invention, which we're going to get to a little bit later in the program, and tell our audience how they can get one for free. But I know that this work was based on the work of George Lakhovsky. Now I came across this when I was doing some testing for other types of EMF protection devices, and it really stood out above all the others. I was really amazed. So tell us a little bit about George Lakhovsky and the work that you did with him.
Okay, well, Lakhovsky, he was a Russian researcher in Paris in the early 1900s, and basically he was very into natural energies. So he was researching things like sunspot cycles and vintage wines, and he did a study of cancer clusters over different types of soils in Paris. And what he found is the highest incidences of cancer were over clay soils, and the lowest were over gravel or loam soils, so he hypothesized or theorized that cosmic radiation was coming in and was actually being reflected back off of the clay soils, which was causing interference patterns, which was disrupting biological systems of people. So what he started doing is he started researching in plants, and he would take geraniums, he would take a series of geraniums, let's say 5, and he would inject them with a plant cancer. And let the plant cancer grow like on the stem. And then he would take one of those and he would put a copper ring around it that would overlap but not touch. So it would actually be a resonant coil in cosmic radiation, Earth's electromagnetic fields. And what he found was that the plant that he put the coil on the cancer was cured and the plant got healthy. The other plants withered and died. So following on from that, he developed what was called the multiple wave oscillator, or MWO. And that was a series of concentric ring copper antennas, the outer one of which was fed with a Tesla coil. So it was high frequency, multiple harmonic frequencies, with the theory that within our cells we had a radio frequency. This was before the DNA. He was sort of envisioning this. And that there would be some sort of resonant coil in each cell that he was trying to make resonant to its natural frequency, like two tuning forks. You strike one, the other one goes. And that's what he developed this device. Now, I came across it in the 1980s and started researching it. And I met a scientist who knew a bit about it, and he started telling me about special ways of doing antennas, which we started working with, and that's really what led to this development.
So this is basically an antenna, is that what you're saying?
It's an antenna.
I see.
Well, humans evolved and bathed in natural frequencies. We have them everywhere around us, and if we look at plants, trees, these things are antennas. You know, each one's a different sort of shape to modulate some sort of different energy coming out of nature, you know, pulling it in, sending it out. We look at insects, they've all got these little, like, microwave antennas on them. And the present electrical situation of the planet is absolutely unprecedented in the entire history of the planet, however long your scientific theory believes that was there. But the fact is it's unnatural, and we really don't know the long-term results because it's only been around for maybe 100 years. And there was warnings, you know, going back almost 100 years that there were going to be troubles with this and the effects on biological systems. Now, as we know from George Zlikovsky's work, that there are beneficial ways of stimulating electromagnetic currents to benefit the biological system.
Definitely.
But there's also, as we know, basically the way that electromagnetism is used in modern technology, it's generally detrimental to the biological systems. So we really need to look at both of those and try to kind of come up and understand, well, how can we somehow bring these concepts together so that the technology we're using isn't really damaging our systems.
Now, you were featured in the 5G Apocalypse movie, and I would like to have our viewers watch a little bit of that clip, and then we'll come back and we'll continue on with this.
Some of the effects that we can look at, well, one thing is just our regular Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz. That's in the same range as microwave ovens, which are also called radar ranges, because that is radar. 2.4 gigahertz is interesting. It's not the peak absorption rate in water for microwave frequencies, but it's at a point where it allows full penetration, because if it came in at the peak, it would prevent the insides from getting warm. So that's with basic Wi-Fi. Now when we look at 5G, 60 gigahertz, this is what they call active dispersal sort of weaponry, just to keep people back. It burns the skin. It doesn't penetrate, but 60 gigahertz is the frequency of oxygen molecule absorption. Since they have electrons that they share with each other, what we breathe is actually O2, pair of oxygen. So being bombarded with 60 gigahertz could very well impair our oxygen absorption rate in our body, and thereby the whole basis of our living system. Martin Pall says, putting tens of millions of 5G antennas without a single biological test of safety has to be about the stupidest idea anyone has had in the history of the world. So assessing all this, we have experts in various fields: military EMF weaponry, biological effects on humans, firefighters that are getting cognitive impairment by being there in them, countries that are banning these sort of technologies around schools because of the impairment to cognitive. Let's weigh that up. We have to say, something smells sinister here.
So Tom, in your own words, could you just explain a little bit about what you feel about 5G and electromagnetic radiation in general?
Well, these days, you know, we see insects are dying, plants are dying. You know, the planet's actually in crisis. You know, some people think, well, pollution, sure, we've fouled our nest. But the electrical systems really have a lot to do with it. We've strung wires all over the planet, putting this crude electromagnetism out, completely opposite of Tesla's free electricity. So now everybody's up in arms over 5G, but I view 5G is just the wake-up call. It's really our relationship with electricity is a problem overall, and that's why I've always striven to find some sort of relationship with natural energies that we can bring into technology, and that's where we came up with this antenna idea.
So Tom, I know that you know the answer to this question, but I want to ask our viewers. So in the last, let's say 50 years, how much do you think the electromagnetic frequency and pollution has gone up in the last 50 years? Let's say, how many people have their hands up for 10 times? How many for 100 times? Okay, how many for 1,000 times? Okay, go for it. For you guys, how many think it's 1,000,000 times? I know you know the answer to this. It's 1 quintillion times.
Right.
That's a 1 with 18 zeros behind it. That's how much more electromagnetic frequencies are in our environment now than it was 50 years ago.
Absolutely. As I said, it's unprecedented.
Unprecedented.
We don't really know. And I was just reading a scientific paper on DNA damage from weak microwave fields in the range of cell phones. There's no doubt.
As I said earlier, I was doing some testing on some EMF protection devices, and Tom's device really stood out above the others. It really surprised me. Now, in my last video, I talked about 2 different types of devices. We have active devices and passive devices. Active devices are those that use a battery or a power source to emit some kind of bio-friendly frequency. Now, a passive device relies on like the body's own biofield energy or cosmic rays. Now, this is actually Tom's invention, and it's a passive type device, meaning it doesn't have any power source. Is that correct, Tom?
Other than the natural environment itself. That's why we call it passive. It picks up on the ambient energies.
Generally, I have to say that most of the passive devices I've tested don't really do that much for the protection of people's exposure to EMF radiation. I've relied mostly on active devices that can put out a bio-friendly frequency, like the Chio you're wearing that I'm wearing. Those have been really effective. So when I tried this is a small one that was on the back of a phone, and it just blew me away. I was really surprised at how much improvement I saw. I'll show some of those studies in a moment, but I was really surprised at how much improvement we saw with those. So Tom, this is basically a passive device. In other words, it uses the environmental energy of cosmic rays or radiations coming from plants or animals or the body to activate it. And we're going to go into that a little bit more in detail in a moment, because I've discovered now there's actually a very strong power source that we can use to activate these things besides the body's energy. And we're going to go into that a little bit later when we get into how this thing's working. But can you tell us a little bit about some of the experiments that you've done in the past? I know that you've had some incredible results with this already.
All right, well, I've been working with these types of antennas for maybe 30 plus years. When we first started working on them in 1986, basically there used to be little gaps in here in the traditional antennas. In the first ones, we actually put a little reciprocal strip across the gap in the back, which made each coil self-resonating like Lakhovsky's single wire coil. And then they each go against each other, and over the years everybody sort of dropped the back one, and so I've reintroduced it in this new design, and we've added other geometric perfections to it, working on it.
Yeah.
So what we found is when we were first experimenting with it, of course we had to do the artwork, get the perfected artwork to make the antenna. And so we started making stickers with the artwork just for fun, and we're like putting the stickers on like sprout jars while we're sprouting and experimenting with antennas. And what we found was that the pattern itself made the sprouts grow stronger and faster.
Wow.
So if we put a sticker with the pattern on it, that would happen to the sprouts between a control experiment that didn't have them on there. But the antenna was stronger, and I think that's an important point, because a lot of these sort of devices people are using for EMF are basically symbolic. And we've shown in our experiments that you do get results, but these antennas, these phone antennas, they're real antennas. They're copper and gold.
Right, this is actually a printed circuit board.
Yeah, they're precision, frequency-independent antennas. And we would experiment with like wine, or we'd put a sticker on a bottle of wine. We have 2 identical bottles of wine. And I'd tell people, hey, look, I got these 2 bottles of wine. I want you to tell me which one tastes better. And generally, people would pick the one with the sticker, even though they didn't know it. When I'd show them, they'd go, wow, can I get some of those stickers?
They want to make their wine taste better. Now, tell me some more about some of the experiments you did. I know you did some with some cultures, yogurt cultures or milk. Or
Oh, yeah, we did some with milk. So I'd take like 2 glasses of milk and leave them just open on a windowsill in the sun. It would get a bit of sun during the day, but sort of equal. And there was a small antenna under one and none under the other. In about 3 days, and this is open air, the milk that was on top of the antenna just perfectly cleanly separated into curds and whey. The other one got all lumpy and moldy. It's sort of like pyramid energy or something like that. You know, we know that it's the golden ratio itself. And also, I had a large antenna, like a 12-inch one in my garden, actually sitting on one of Trevor Constable's old geometric weather tubes from his early experiments. And what we found is like our asparagus would grow towards that instead of the sun. You know, coming from around the different sides, they were like pointing up towards the antenna.
Now, I know you did some structured water results, or somebody did some for you. What was that about?
Right. Oh, there's this amazing researcher in New Zealand, Veda Austin. I met her at International Water Conference, and she's been sort of carrying on and expanding on Masaru Emoto's water crystallization in ice experiments, and absolutely phenomenal. I was just blown away at some of what she had done at her poster session at this conference. So just say, hey, look, I said, here's one of my antennas. I thought, just if you want to have some fun, do it. And she's recently sent us the result. She would take spring water, crystallize it, show the pattern, then she put it in front of a Wi-Fi. Again, we lose the pattern, then put our antenna on, the pattern's there. Take tap water, put it on our antenna, and then you get the perfect crystal. And these are short-term exposures. You were talking a minute or two.
Wow.
This isn't, you know, something where you just got to sit there for an hour or two.
It seems like this antenna might be like smoothing out those waveforms a bit, at least how our cells are perceiving them, because our body seems to relax, and we had much, much higher scores across the board with the HRV. What's your opinion on how this is working?
That's a good question. I've really been thinking about it a lot since seeing the tests, because I would like to say, even though I've been working with these antennas for 30 years, I never developed them commercially. I do them because I like working with them myself, and I tend to make a little batch and give them out to friends to experiment with. Since seeing the test, I was actually blown away when I saw your results, to actually see the biological response on the HRV and the GDV, the gas discharge visualization experiments. That in itself has fascinated me, and I've really been trying to think out what the mechanism. So yes, in general, I think that the phone waves are basically driving this antenna. It's just harmonizing whatever in the area, because it is a very powerful frequency-independent antenna. But there could also be some concomitant sort of biological reaction just being in proximity to the antenna as well, because we know that it has those effects.
Well, we don't know exactly why they work, but I definitely can guarantee that they do work. I mean, we've seen it both with the gas discharge, the Kirlian photography, and also with the HRV. So let's have a look at some of those studies, and I'll go through those real quickly for you so you can see for yourself what these things are doing. Today I'm going to test the life force energy coming out of my hand phone. I'm using the experimental life energy meter, which tests the prana, or the chi, of an object. So when I get close to this, you can see that I have chi energy, which is measured by the meter. Now when I place the hand phone on there, it goes up to 100%, but that's my chi energy, and when I let go, then it goes down to 0. So today I want to test the BioArc disc and find out if it will change the amount of life force or harmonize the frequencies coming out of the hand phone. So I'm going to place the BioArc disc on the sensor, and now I put the hand phone on there, and 100%. Look at that. Amazing. So it's holding the life force, or changing perhaps the frequencies coming out of the hand phone into a life-giving pranic energy, which we've seen in the GDV, the gas discharge visualization, Kirlian photography. We've also seen it with the heart variability testing, the HRV testing. So this is just another way to look at it, but it seems to be like all of these tests are coming up to the same conclusion, which is the BioArc disc is creating a harmonic field. So look at the energy resources on the left and the right, the big increase in the drop in biological age. The spine straightened out, and look at the aura, it just brightened right up. And the meridians came way up into the green, almost all balanced. Again, the energy resources way up, and the biological age went down, which is a good thing. Spine straightened out, and the aura got brighter and bigger, and again, meridians balanced out. Repeat over and over. Energy resources up, biological age dropping, spine corrects in most cases, aura gets brighter, and meridians get better. Now, it's not going to fix everything 100%, but it's way better than just holding onto your hand phone. The difference is just amazing in every single case. Look at the spine on that, and the aura just straightened right out, and almost all the meridians balanced right up. Let's look at the overall health index from 61 to 94%, from 33% to 57%, 41% to 56%, 27% to 42%, 61% to 71%. And the GDV, the gas discharge Carilion, started at 99% without a hand phone, drops to 71%, and then balances back up to 85%. So without holding the phone, started at 97, holding a phone, dropped to 85%, balanced back up to 98% with the BioArc disc. Now in my next video, I'm going to show you how to really up your game, because I tested not only the BioArc disc, but a bio-friendly frequency generator, the Qi Organizer, together with it. And that put it like at the top of the charts. So in my next video, join me in a few days, watch your email for another link, and we're going to show you how to really go to the very top. I want to thank you for joining us, and I would like to ask you to share it with 5 people this week that you think could benefit from reducing their EMF pollution from their phone. Thank you again for watching, and stay with me.